I worked Pine Hollow County when the radios went dumb and the sky went mean. If you've never been out here, imagine a county big enough to lose a church in, but so broke the jail coffee is instant and the radios are hand-me-down. Forest stitched to blacktop. Creeks running like cut veins whenever the Gulf throws a tantrum. Night makes everything a rumor, where the shoulder ends, where the water begins. What's looking back from the tree line? You learn the road by feel and God's mercy. The call hit a little past midnight jail-side dispatch because the tower north was lightning struck. Maya, our mother hen, clucked into two phones at once, her head tilted the way she tilts it when the trouble's live. Called her, I got a female with an infant flood zone off River Spur. Male beating on doors, demanding in. Says she's alone. Radio's still dead, I asked, already grabbing the yellow rain shell that makes us look like high-vis scarecrows. Dead as a possum on 19. Call me from the hip when you're close. I'll ring you every 10 minutes till my soul leaves my body. That's romantic. Go, she said, and her voice softened the way it does when she blesses you without saying the word. I let Southen know by text, 30, 40 minutes away if the water didn't eat his charger. The jail door thumped behind me and the rain slapped me hard enough to change my mind. I went anyway. River Spur had turned into a slate sheet with white veins. The ditch wasn't a ditch but a moving idea, shouldering the blacktop. Visibility was what a man deserves. I inched where I would have cruised, high beams useless, takedowns better, wipers slashing like they were angry at me personally. Twice the rear end stepped out like a drunk cow and I brought it back, talking to the car the way I talk to folks I'm cuffing. Easy now, we're both going home. Maya rang before the ring registered. She says he's back, kicking the door, tapping the windows. I can hear him, called her, I can hear him. How far? You're closer than anyone with a gun. The line burped, the storm stealing a breath. 10 minutes, Noah, call me at the end of 10. When the lane dipped, I lost the paint. The road ahead became a lump of darkness, then a sheen. I stopped where the water looked deep enough to baptize a pickup and got out. It was a wrong kind of quiet. No frogs, no cicadas. Only rain stitching the night and my wipers hissing across nothing. Lightning went off without thunder, just light, white walls, then black. The surface didn't show where it ended. I put the palm of my hand to the water like you do to a horse, asked it and got nothing. Well, I told it and nosed in. The charger floated and then decided to remember it was a car. Water hissed up through the door bottoms, cold fingers at my ankles. A bend appeared like a rumor. The nose cut around and the tires found gravel, then mud, then blessed traction. I punched it enough to lurch out and stop on a square of land the size of a living room. Four-way stop, two drowned arms, two arms limping toward trailers and trees. Lightning showed a mailbox with a cartoon bear and somebody's last name running black in the rain. Her place was 3 houses down on the left, if houses can be double wides on cinder blocks with kids' bikes half drowned, if down can be knee-deep. I left the car angled to leave and took the rest on foot. Water went over boot tops fast and turned my jeans into anchors. Every splash sounded like an announcement. The trailers out here sit 3 feet high because past floods taught folks who wanted to learn. Her stairs were aluminum slick. I took them slow, gun snugged, light at my chest, knocked low and loud. Sheriff's office. I dropped back off the steps because I also remember the funerals where the round came through the door. I scanned left, scanned right, saw my fogged breath like I was freezing in August, and for a blink I was sure I smelled snow. The door cracked. A woman's eye showed, widened, wilder for being alone. Badge. I opened the rain shell and hit it with the beam, badge, Glock, radio that was a dead ornament tonight. The baby cried behind her like a sawed violin. He was here, she whispered. He's here. Lock back up, stay by the door. I'm checking the sides and the rear. Don't scream if you hear something under the porch. It might be me. She locked it. I circled slow, light, low, gun a yard off my line of sight. Corners got a pie slice each. The yard was a way station for stuff that had been useful once. Mower, sandbags, bike with orange streamers, cinder blocks. A baby pool flipped and half full of leaves that had turned into the kind of water that breeds. I ducked to look under. Black ribs of floor joists, webbing, a damp line like an old tide. Lived in darkness. Lightning strobed and the world blinked, and in that blank middle between light and thunder, I had the primitive feeling that the dark had moved closer while the light was off. I retreated a step and remembered the obvious. 3 feet of crawl space is 3 feet of hiding. I went back to a knee and swept the beam left to right, slow enough to make the shadows tell me a story if they had one. Boards, bags, the cheap plastic of a ride-on toy. If he was under there, he was flat as a secret. Zeke, I said, using the tone you use on dogs and men you've cuffed before. I don't have charges yet. You leave, we don't meet tonight. You stay, I promise you jail and a long bad morning. I let the rain answer me for a long 10 count. It answered like rain. The 10 minutes were up by a feeling in my ribs. My phone buzzed. Maya. He's back. She says he's walking the windows, tapping with a nail. I can hear, hang on, Noah. The line choked and dropped. There's a future I can always see on nights like this. Me alone in a room built before electricity, no radio, no witness, choices that need to be made now and explained later. I don't love that future, but I don't avoid it either. The baby coughed, and it wasn't a fussy cough, it was raw. I took the steps sideways, posted left of the door, knocked low again, hard. Sheriff's office. Breath. No shot. The knob turned. The smell hit like a memory you wish you didn't own. Sinus rot and egg sour. The door opened 6 inches and an eye stared down from the top inside corner where no person's face should be, glinting like a raccoon's but wrong, amethyst, not green. It withdrew. A dog's growl crawled out of an empty room. Let me see your hands, I said to whatever was in the shape of a person, and slid in. Living room on the right with a couch that had seen more naps than guests, kitchen ahead, a counter between. Hallway left with 2 bedrooms flanking a bathroom like every single wide I've ever cleared. The baby's cry sawed the left hallway. I moved 3 steps into the living room and something came out of the hallway at a tilt, fast enough to shoot, human enough to make me freeze. The woman fell sideways like her strings got cut, eyes rolled back, breath hitching in short, high pulls. I didn't catch her. I don't know if I should have. I anchored on the hall and took the pie slices with the light, expecting a face, getting a door. My light died like somebody pinched the filament with fingers. Darkness wasn't dark. It was a wall. I backed into the TV and it went down in a plastic scream. In that absolute black, a voice that had smoked too much and never heard a joke it liked said, almost kindly, "Deputy." I blinked and the light was back. The darkness had pulled back to the doorframe like a puddle. I breathed on 4s in through the nose and out past a curse until my hand steadied and then I saw him. He stood in the kitchen with his back to me like a man about to cry into the sink. The black raincoat was fringe and string, soaked through until it looked part of him. Shoulders hunched. Head cocked like he was listening to music other people couldn't hear. "Let me see your hands," I said again. He didn't turn. He made a sound like cooing. "But my hands are full," he said, and lifted one out from his chest. He had the baby by the ankle. A small body made enormous by how breakable it was, swinging like something you'd use to check wind direction. The skin was flushed under the film of rain and heat and fear. He tapped its nose with a dirty fingernail. The baby tried to breathe around panic. I can shoot a bad man in the face from 7 feet with a group tighten as a fist. I drew all of that skill into my arms and then I reholstered. Whenever somebody wants you to aim at a baby, you don't give them what they want. "Zeke," I said, though that wasn't his legal, though it was what he was to me. A man I'd cuffed once and told myself I'd never have to cuff again. "You're under arrest." He smiled without showing teeth and let the head go. The baby dropped half a foot and came back in an arc. "Miranda me," he said, amused. "You have the right to remain silent." I came forward like I was going to read him his eternity. "Anything you say can and will." He flung the baby up. The ceiling was lower than physics. I don't remember dropping the gun or the light. I remember the weight of the baby when it hit my arms and the way every part of my body built a wall around it. Stars exploded behind my eyes and I realized my head had been introduced to something hard. My knee folded sideways and something heavy landed on me, him. Hands went for the gun. I heard the plastic scrape of holster safeties and felt gratitude for the guy who sold us on level 3s. He didn't go for the gun. He went for my face. He grabbed, thumbs seeking, and I had the strangest thought. He wants to make me stop seeing. And then I remembered the academy instructor with the marine voice who said some things in a classroom we all swore we wouldn't do. I did one of them. I don't recommend it. It works. He screamed like he'd been waiting for that exact pain for a long time. He rolled off me and retreated into the utility dark. I got the baby to the couch and fenced it with pillows, terrified by the softness of all its bones, like I was trying to keep fog from rolling off a table, and then the hallway moved again. The bathroom door was gone. In its place, black. Not absence of light, absence of world. The edge crept over the carpet and bleached it to nothing. The woman's calves were already gone, and that galvanic horror cut through whatever shakes I had left. I pulled her by the wrists and cursed until her knees came free of the line where the world ended. The light died again. "God," I said. "Jesus," I said. The light returned. I leaned on the fallen TV to keep from falling in any other way. Some fights happen on the ground and some happen where your decisions do. In that living room I made the decision that would cost me nights for the rest of my life. If anything needed to be hung, it would be me. I heard the back door clatter on its loose hinges. The yard behind was a drowned rectangle. Beyond it, the forest made a wall, and then the wall welled up and took a breath. Lightning showed a clearing where lightning had no business showing a clearing. He had her by the collar like a cat holds a kitten. I went out the back, down, nearly fell. Caught myself on the slick handrail. Nearly fell again because the handrail was a snake my brain made from rain. He disappeared at the tree line, and I followed through brush that had learned how to hold a man by the ankles. The beam of my light drew a tunnel through vines, and I stayed inside that tunnel and time went sideways. I don't know how long the forest took. I know I came into a circle where all the trees had agreed not to grow. A stump rose at the center. A sapling grew from the dead heart like repentance done late. Overhead, a rope that hadn't been there was there. The rain stopped and stayed where it was, pearl beads hung on invisible threads. The quiet had mass. Zeke, if that's all he was anymore, rested the woman on the stump like a thing he planned to eat slow. He kept a hand on her shoulder like a pastor at a baptism. He gave me a look with one eye that was many eyes. "It likes sweetness," he said. "It has a taste for it." Behind him, a man shape taller than any man stepped out of the tree like the tree had made it. It wasn't shadow. It was a kind of subtraction. It put a hand on Zeke's head, and he trembled with joy or seizure. I reached for my gun and realized it was in the kitchen, lying where I had been. It didn't matter. I didn't want a gun, I wanted a rule. "Take me," I said, and my voice didn't shake. "Not her, not with the baby in the other room. You want a thing given, I give me. No bargain, no ask." The rain beads hummed. The thing moved toward me so smoothly the world around it got out of the way. It put a palm where a man's hair would gray first, and every ugly thought I had ever had about myself bloomed like algae and tried to choke me. It didn't speak. It didn't have to. It showed. It showed her dying and dying and dying, and how I was late and how I would always be late. It showed rope and the way a county remembers rope, and how love is the smallest thing and therefore the most fun to crush. It waited. It wanted me to retract the gift and make a deal. I didn't. I stepped closer until my head pressed into its palm like I was its son. Time hiccuped. The rain fell. The rope twitched like a snake cut into inches. The bent man laughed, not a sound exactly, more like a shaking against the idea of laughter, and withdrew into the tree. Zeke's grin died and he looked smaller, or maybe that was just the rain unfreezing and gravity returning to him. He grabbed for anything he could hurt and found nothing but his own coat. He bolted for the brush like a deer that remembers it has feet. I got the woman back to her house with the care of a man carrying nitrogen. I checked the baby, and the baby was loud and therefore alive. I called Maya, and she answered with 3 voices layered, present, past, future, all worried. 10 minutes, she said. You owe me my 10 minutes. I'm headed home, I said, and meant the office where the coffee was moral support and the report would be a lie that sheltered a truth. On my porch the next morning, the coil of rope waited, wet, dripping onto a sun-bleached board. It smelled like rain that hadn't fallen yet. I didn't touch it. I didn't have to. The drop pattern spelled my name if you stood where the mailman stands and squinted the way a superstitious man squints. The radios came back that afternoon. The frogs started up the following night. The cicadas returned on Sunday like a choir that had been late to service. The county pretended it forgot, because forgetting is how a county like ours lives. I didn't forget. You can't forget the exact weight of a baby dropped from a ceiling lower than it should be, or the way your own name looks written in water. And you don't forget a laugh you felt instead of heard. Morning in Pine Hollow County doesn't come with sun so much as with humidity deciding to switch sides. I sat at the scarred oak desk in the sheriff's office, a mug of burnt coffee steaming in my face, and the report form glowing on the department's one working desktop. Reports are scripture in our line of work. The district attorney doesn't care if your boots are still muddy with floodwater, or if you've still got bruises blooming on your ribs. What matters is the boxes ticked and the story made neat. The problem was, there was nothing neat about what happened. So I started typing the kind of report a man writes when he wants to keep his badge. Responded to 911 call at River Spur. Located residence occupied by Alyssa G., an infant son. Encountered suspect known locally as Ezekiel Zeke Burrows. Suspect fled on foot. Victims recovered safely. No further injuries observed. Every sentence felt like lying under oath, and maybe it was. But try telling the sheriff that the rain froze midair and a shadow with purple eyes palmed your head like a blessing. You'd be in psych evals before you finished the word entity. The body cam was worse. Normally, I'd breathe easy knowing the footage would cover what words couldn't. Instead, when I plugged mine into the evidence system, the playback looked like a cheap VHS eaten by mold. It would run clean for the first 2 minutes, headlights cutting through rain, me slogging knee-deep toward the trailer. Then suddenly, the rain stopped. On screen, every droplet froze like glass beads strung on invisible threads. My flashlight beam smeared out like someone dragged a paintbrush across the frame. Then the timestamp skipped forward, 00:15:42 to 03:51:07 in the blink of an eye. I scrubbed back and forth, but the corruption held. The baby's cries played like they'd been stretched on a cassette. My own voice, sharp and panicked, came out in chords, layered like 3 of me speaking at once. Maya wandered in from dispatch with her hair tied up and her coffee gone cold. She leaned over my shoulder and frowned at the static. Camera on the fritz again. Something like that. She tilted her head. Funny thing, heard a rumor down at county jail this morning about Zeke's brother. Turd, they called him. Story goes he died last week. Heart attack in holding. But that doesn't line up, does it? Thought you tangled with Zeke and his brother last night. I shut the playback window and tried not to let my hands shake on the mouse. The evidence room in our department is a glorified broom closet with metal shelves and a second-hand lock. I carried the body cam hard drive in a sealed bag and logged it the old-fashioned way, pen scratching down my initials. The overhead light flickered. Once, twice. Then it cut out entirely. I cursed and dug for my flashlight. The beam caught the shelves and the tagged evidence bags, meth pipes, rusted pistols, an old deer rifle with duct tape on the stock. The monitor for the evidence server blinked back to life on its own, playback window still open. On screen, the storm replayed, but not the way I remembered. Frame by frame, the rain froze again. Each droplet hung crystalline. The system advanced 1 second at a time, the droplets turning into glittering beads that rotated in perfect slow motion, like somebody was stringing jewelry out of the flood. I stepped closer, forgetting the flashlight in my hand. My own figure came into frame, soaked raincoat, badge catching the light. I watched myself sweep the trailer perimeter with the Glock low and the light high. The frozen rain surrounded me like 1,000 tiny chandeliers. Then the server jumped to a still frame. There I was, frozen mid-step, light beam catching the side of the house. And just behind me, closer than memory allowed, stood the bent man. It wasn't blurred or corrupted. It was clear as a mugshot. Tall, wrong-angled, shoulders pitched forward like they'd been broken and never set right. Purple eyes reflecting even in the monochrome playback, boring into the camera lens like it knew I'd be here later watching. And worse, my own head tilted like I was listening to it. The screen flickered. The power surged. Then the lights snapped back on, humming fluorescent, evidence room ordinary again. The still frame was gone, but I knew what I'd seen. And I knew it was closer than it had ever let me remember. It started with phones ringing about the same road. Not unusual after storms, half the county thinks every puddle's a flash flood. But this wasn't same road, different callers. It was 2 towns apart. Call 1. River Spur Bridge is out, water across the blacktop, mailbox floating downstream. Call 2. Out on Pine Trace, same thing, bridge gone, water eating the road, same damn mailbox. Only problem, River Spur and Pine Trace are 15 miles apart, different ends of the county. There's no way the same battered red mailbox with a painted cartoon bear could be drowning in both places at once. I scribbled both addresses on a yellow legal pad and stared at them long enough for my coffee to go cold. Mapping it out on the wall chart, I saw something that made the hair rise on my arms. Both roads bent the same direction. Both crossed a creek swollen from last week's floods. Both had a family named Carson who'd lived there since cattle drove the county instead of cars. And the mailbox. Both reports described it the same. Red paint flaking, a cartoon bear grinning wide, flag snapped clean off. The kind of detail you don't make up. I drove out to River Spur first. Found the mailbox half tilted in the mud, creek chewing its post raw. Took photos, logged GPS. By the time I was back in the cruiser, Maya called in. Got another call, Pine Trace. Same mailbox, same water. Caller swears she waved you down already. That's impossible. I'm holding the thing in front of me. Well, deputy, either we've got a prank war on our hands or you've been cloned. Her laugh was thin, mine was thinner. The rain had eased, just drizzle silvering the blacktop when headlights cut across me on Pine Trace. Sedan, late model Chevy, creeping like the driver wasn't sure the road was really under him. I pulled behind, lights flashing. He slowed, pulled onto the shoulder. Easy stop, textbook. I walked up on the driver's side, hand brushing the holster out of habit. The window rolled down. Inside, a man in his 40s, eyes bagged like he hadn't slept. Hands at 10 and 2. Evening, sir. Road's in bad shape, you aware of that? He blinked at me, opened his mouth. The words came 5 seconds later. Yes, officer, I was just turning around. My skin crawled. The lips moved and the sound lagged like bad video buffering. You alone tonight? I asked. His mouth, yes. The sound, yes, no, yes. I shined the light across the passenger seat. Empty. The beam hit the rearview mirror and for half a second I saw myself in the back seat, wet raincoat, eyes blacked out. Then the mirror was just a mirror again. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. He didn't. He sat there trembling like he wanted to but couldn't. Then his stereo crackled alive, dashcam feed mirrored on the display. My cruiser headlights burning through drizzle. The timestamp read tomorrow's date. I leaned closer. There on the screen, me, climbing out of my cruiser in the same raincoat, same badge, same posture. Except the timestamp said tomorrow, 11:07 p.m. And worse, future me was already walking up to the driver's window. The real me, right now. I didn't dream that night. I didn't sleep either, just drifted in the chair by my kitchen window until dawn spread thin over Pine Hollow. First thing I noticed when I stepped outside for the paper, a coil of rope sat dead center on my porch. It wasn't just rope. It was the same coarse hemp I'd seen hanging from the bent oak in the clearing, the fibers still swollen from rain. But the sky was clear, sun already hot enough to bleach the dew off the grass. The coil dripped anyway. Drops fell heavy, darkening the boards in a circle around it, even though no cloud hovered overhead. The paperboy waved from the street. I waved back like nothing was wrong. Then I closed the door behind me and stared at the rope like it had left itself a calling card. Curiosity or stupidity, doesn't matter which, made me fetch my flashlight and crouch low. The boards of the porch showed footprints. Bare. Too long in the toe, too flat in the heel. They led up the porch steps, then stopped. Not like someone wiped their feet or turned around, just stopped. 6 prints, then nothing. I followed them down into the yard. Same story, impressions in the grass dark with dew, then gone. 20 yards over they started again, pointing another direction. 10 prints pause, then another cluster 30 yards north. Like someone skipping on a record, appearing, vanishing, reappearing. Every stop made my gut colder. If I plotted it on a map, the points might have spelled something. My brain refused to try. By mid-morning, I was on a dirt road west of town, following a lead only Maya knew about. She told me about an old-timer named of Red Holcomb who used to work as a prison hangman before Texas switched to the needle. Lived out on a farm with more goats than neighbors. Red's half blind, she'd warned, but his memory's sharper than he deserves. He'll talk rope with you, just don't let him hand you any. Holcomb's place was a sprawl of rusted tractors and barns that leaned like drunks. The goats scattered as I drove up. Red himself sat on the porch, blind eye milk-white, good eye glinting like he'd been expecting me. "You brought it back," he said, voice like gravel. I froze. "Brought what?" He tapped his cane twice on the boards. "The coil always comes back. You can toss it in the river, burn it, cut it into inches, it'll be waiting where you lay your head. That's how it was with me, that's how it'll be with you." I swallowed hard. "You saying this happened before?" Red chuckled without humor. "Son, I've walked more men to rope than I can count, but there's one rope you don't retire from. Back in the 20s, we used to hang men under a bent oak north of here. Some guilty, some just unlucky. That tree got cut down after a lightning strike, but stumps don't forget. Rope don't either. Blood makes it remember." I asked him straight, "And what happens if you keep it?" He leaned forward, blind eye staring off at nothing. "It knots itself. Not for you, for the name you speak." Behind him in the field I saw the stump of a tree. Not oak, not anymore, just a splintered pedestal, goats gnawing weeds around it. But my gut told me this was one of the places where the bent man had walked. Back home, I laid the coil on my kitchen table against every instinct I had. It smelled like wet bark, though my hands came away dry. On impulse, or maybe because I needed to test Holcomb's warning, I said the first name that came to mind. "Alyssa, the mother, the one I'd pulled from the clearing." The rope twitched. Before I could blink, the coil began to writhe. The loose end slithered through the loops, folding, twisting. My breath caught as the strands pulled tight, cinching in on themselves with the creak of stretching hemp. By the time I backed across the room, it had tied itself into a perfect noose, and the knot pulsed, once like it had a heartbeat. Maya's voice is the sound the whole county leans on. Farmers with tractors in ditches, teenagers swearing they saw lights in the bottoms, deputies like me with mud up to our knees. We all run on the steady hum of her dispatch tone. She's the mother hen with a headset, keeping tabs on every lost chick. That week I started living for her check-ins. Every 10 minutes her voice cutting through static like a blessing. 10-minute Noah, you good? Even when she was asking, it sounded like telling. Problem was, her voice was showing up other places. By midweek, the county board was already grumbling. Phone logs showed calls stacking around churches and dry wells. First call, somebody beating on the side of Mount Olive Baptist, quoting scripture wrong, said, "By his ropes you are bound, not stripes." Second call, St. Jude's Well House, voices echoing up the pipe, sounded like a sermon in reverse. Third call, Old Mission on Highway 9, hymnals out of place, pages all stuck together. Every report carried a twist of faith bent wrong. The good book cracked and bleeding at the edges. Maya patched me into a dozen of them. Each time she sounded calm, steady. But her words kept doubling on my end of the line like a hymn sung round style, her first phrase echoing back layered with the next. You're clear on Mount Olive, Olive, stay watch for the well. Well, 10-minute. Noah, Noah. The call that stuck came from the basement of the First United Church of Pine Hollow. Report, strange smell, choir practice cut short, congregation rattled. I arrived after sundown. The building smelled of mildew and furniture polish, hymnals stacked at the back like bricks. I traced the smell down a narrow stairwell into the basement. The air was swamp thick, heavier with each step. The hymnals down there weren't stacked. They were strewn across the floor, pages wet and bleeding black mold that spidered out into words I couldn't read. Voices whispered under the concrete, steady and low, like a congregation praying where no congregation sat. I lifted one book. The mold on the page shaped itself into letters before my eyes. Isaiah 53:5, but twisted. By his ropes we are bound, and the punishment that brought us peace was upon her. The lights overhead flickered. Then time itself seemed to hiccup. The pastor, who'd followed me down with a flashlight, froze mid-blink. Dust motes in the air froze too, suspended like stars. Only the hymnals moved, their pages flipping without wind. The whispering turned into a prayer I didn't recognize, and yet I knew every word. My throat moved like it wanted to join in. I pressed my back to the wall and forced a breath through my teeth. Not tonight. The pages stilled. The pastor blinked alive again, stumbling like he'd missed a step. He didn't notice the gap, didn't notice we'd been somewhere else. Back in the cruiser, I clutched the radio like it was the only real thing left. Static crackled, and then Maya's voice came. 10-minute, Noah, you good? I exhaled relief. Yeah, I'm good. Then another Maya overlapped her. 10-minute, Noah, you good? And a third. 10-minute, Noah, you good? All at once, 3 versions of her voice layered together, slightly off-timed like a choir warming up in an empty sanctuary. The radio speaker hummed with it, the words vibrating my ribs. For a heartbeat, I didn't know which voice to answer. And the silence between them felt like something waiting to sing next. You can drive back roads in Pine Hollow for years and never notice the bottle trees until one catches the sun just right. Old cedar poles jammed into the dirt, branches bristling with cobalt glass bottles turned upside down. Folks say they trap haints, spirits, bad luck. That evening, before the storm even thought about forming, I heard the clink, soft, uneasy. The blue bottles rattled against each other, though the air was still. No wind, no cicadas, just glass singing to itself like warning bells on a line I couldn't see. I slowed the cruiser, opened the door, and stood listening to bottles argue with a silence that hadn't moved yet. The bottle tree belonged to Miss Lillian Harp, 90 years old if a day, sharp-eyed under her headscarf. She came out onto the porch before I knocked. You offered yourself, she said flat like I'd just walked into confession. My throat tightened. Excuse me. Word carries. You told it you'd take her place. Be careful, deputy. The thing that keeps books don't forget names. It writes them down. Yours is inked already. She lifted her chin toward the tree. These here keep spirits busy chasing themselves in the glass, but your problem's bigger than spirits. You tangled with something that tallies debts. I asked her what to do. She shook her head. Only thing worse than owing is trying to pay. Don't go smashing the books, boy. You'll just spill the ink. I left with her warning burned behind my ribs and the sound of bottles clinking in no-wind air. I came back after dark, parking off the road, lights out. The tree stood against the horizon, blue glass catching slivers of moon. At first, nothing but silence. Then a sound rose, low, resonant, not wind, not glass. A hum. Each bottle trembled, vibrating like a struck bell. The hum layered, grew, turned into voices, not words, screams. Each bottle carried one thin, high, endless. My flashlight beam hit the bottles and the glass changed. Where there had been cobalt shine, there were eyes, dozens, pale, unblinking, watching through the glass. I gritted my teeth and kept the light steady. This was a trick, a performance. If I blinked, I lost, but the bottles blinked back. One by one, the screams lined up into harmony, a dissonant choir that made my bones ache. Then one bottle in the middle of the tree filled with motion. Not just light, not just reflection, a picture. Her Alyssa, the mother I'd dragged out of the storm house, rope tight around her neck, eyes bulging, face purple, legs kicking. The bottle showed her jerking on the noose like it was happening now. I lunged forward, hands shaking between my gun and my flashlight. My voice cracked, not again. The bottle trembled, image sharpening. Her lips moved, silent inside the glass. If I didn't smash it, she'd hang again. If I did smash it, I didn't know what I'd let out. And the hum from all the bottles rose to a single, unbearable pitch, like they were daring me to choose. By July, most of the county had dried out. Roads still soft at the edges, but the sun worked hard. Except at one trailer off Old Mill Road. Folks called in saying the floor never dried. Said it stayed slick with ankle-deep mud no matter how many towels they laid down. When I stepped inside, the smell hit first. Wet earth, mold, swamp gas. The floor squelched under my boots, thick brown sucking like the whole trailer was sinking. The walls dripped condensation as if the storm still raged outside though the night was clear. One woman stood barefoot in the corner, shaking her head. "We mop, deputy. We burn sage. We pray. It just comes back." I looked down. She wasn't wrong. The flood had taken residence. I began checking the rooms, jotting down what I saw. Front hall, kitchen, 2 bedrooms, bath, ordinary, but the footprints didn't match. My own tracks looped back on themselves. A print from my left boot overlapped my right, but the tread faced the wrong way. I turned, confused, and when I looked back, the hall had shortened. I blinked hard, took 3 steps forward. The kitchen doorway was closer than it had been. The bathroom door had shifted sides. Every time I blinked, the trailer's floor plan rearranged itself, like somebody was dragging and dropping walls when I wasn't looking, and the mud never dried. Then I heard crying, not the woman's, a child's from deeper in the trailer. I followed, flashlight cutting through damp air, hand on the Glock out of habit. The mud got thicker, rising from ankles to calves. My boots made wet detonations with every step. I kicked a swollen door open. Inside, a boy about 8 stood barefoot, pajamas plastered with mud, big eyes, snot running down his face. "Deputy," he said, voice thin, "you came back. I've never been here before, son." He shook his head. "No, you saved me. Twice you pulled me out, twice." Behind him, the shadows of the room rippled, walls bending like heat haze. I felt that nausea again, the sense I was late to something I hadn't done yet. I scooped him up anyway, carried him toward the door, but the hallway stretched. Each step, the exit retreated like it was sliding away on rails. My radio squawked, static. Then Maya's voice. Her tone was sharper than I'd ever heard. "Noah, answer me right now." I pressed the mic. "Go ahead." Her voice doubled, frantic. "I've got you in 2 places. One unit pinged on Old Mill. Another's answering a call on County Line." I froze in the mud, buoy clinging to my neck, water dripping from the ceiling onto both of us. Her words split again, overlapping in my ear like 2 radios bleeding into each other. "Which one are you?" Highway 17 had a mile-long stretch everyone in Pine Hollow called the Bar Ditch. Flat, straight, nothing tricky. Yet wrecks piled up there more than on any curve in the county. Deputies joked it was cursed. Insurance men blamed micro-sleeps and deer. But last week, 3 totaled cars were hauled out in 4 nights. All drivers swore the same thing. The road bent sideways, just long enough to send them into the ditch. I parked at mile marker 212 at dusk, logbook open on the cruiser's hood. The asphalt lay ruler straight into the horizon. No blind spots, no hills. Yet my gut tightened like I was staring at a trap already sprung. Dawn made it worse. Each morning reports came in about carcasses, deer laid out in the ditch, not scattered like roadkill, arranged. On day 1, 6 bodies in a rough circle. Day 2, 9 tighter, spiraling inward. Day 3, a full coil, necks bent like they'd been twisted into place. No tire tracks, no boot prints, just wet grass around them. The state game warden drove out once, vomited at the sight, said he wouldn't come back. I sketched the pattern in my notepad, but the lines never matched the bodies. Something about the geometry slipped when I tried to hold it still. That's when Maya pushed a new toy into my lap. We'd gotten a loaner from State Patrol, a roof-mounted LiDAR scanner meant to map accident scenes. Every deputy hated it. It was bulky, fussy, battery drain. But Meyer insisted I test it here. So I rigged it on the cruiser roof and let it sweep the ditch. The computer showed wireframes of trees, culverts, fence posts. And then nothing. A hole, not black, not corrupted, just absence. A clean oval gap, as if the scanner refused to draw what stood there. The ditch looked fine to the naked eye. But on the monitor, the mile-long stretch showed a patch of blank, a wound in the grid. I climbed out, holding a flare, heat burning my glove, edged closer. My boots squelched in damp weeds, deer stench thick in the air. The hole hummed at the edge of hearing like the LiDAR had a tinnitus and passed it to me. My instincts screamed not to lean in, but instincts had failed me before. I lit the flare, red smoke curling, and held it over the ditch. Then I let it go. It didn't fall down. It fell sideways, like gravity had tipped 90 degrees. I spun, tracking its trail, and watched it land behind me on the gravel shoulder, hissing bright in the dawn, exactly where I'd been standing seconds ago. And the ditch hummed louder, like it was laughing that I'd given it fire. The county archive squats in the basement of the courthouse like a forgotten lung. Fluorescent bulbs hum weakly, filing cabinets lean on each other for support, and the air smells like paper left out in the rain. Clerks avoid the place. That's how I knew to look there. I found it in the restricted stacks, a ledger bound in cracked calfskin, edges burned, cover stamped with nothing but a faded impression of rope. On the spine, handwritten, Debts of Justice, 1891-1938. Inside, a list of names, columns neat, ink browned. Beside each name, one word, rope. The deeper I read, the worse it became. Notes scrawled in margins by different hands. Deputy J.R. Collings made bargain. To spare his wife, took 3. Disappeared on patrol, 1911. Deputy Ruthland never married. Carried the coil to his deathbed. 90 years old, eyes clouded purple. Whispered he saw them waiting at the foot of the bed. Sheriff Klein refused bargain. Rope found on his porch. Entire household perished in fire, 1922. Every entry followed the same rhythm. Someone owing, someone paying, someone escaping for a while but not forever. The ledger wasn't just a record. It was a contract. I flipped faster, hands sweating on the brittle paper. The pages groaned like they remembered being written. Then the room changed. The courthouse hum cut out. Fluorescent buzzing, distant typewriters, traffic outside, all gone. The silence was so thick I thought my ears had stopped working. Dust motes in the shaft of my flashlight froze midair. I waved a hand through them. They didn't move. The ledger lay open, waiting. The ink on the page bled fresh, letters swimming. Names slithered down the lines, rearranging themselves like eels until they spelled two words: Noah Calder. My own name, written in ink older than my grandfather. I shoved the book back, chair screeching. But the pages turned on their own, riffling faster than wind. They landed back on the same line: Noah Calder, O's rope. The paper trembled. Then with a dry rip, the whole page tore itself free. Before I could react, it slapped flat against my palm like it was wet. I yanked back in horror, but it clung, fibers burrowing against skin, ink seeping. When I raised my hand to the dim light, the words were visible through flesh and bone: O's rope. And the page pulsed once, like it had a heartbeat. The sister's house sat behind chain link and busted lawn chairs, the kind of yard where every toy left out had turned sun-bleached and brittle. She held her vigil under the old pecan tree. Neighbors trickled in, women with hymnals, men with work boots, a scattering of kids too young to understand why they were there. Mason jars lined the fence, each with a flickering votive candle. She had a framed picture of her brother propped against the trunk, Ezekiel Burroughs. Zeke, the man who wasn't dead enough. I didn't wear a uniform. I came plainclothes, hands deep in pockets, feeling eyes follow me from the moment I stepped off the gravel. The sister saw me anyway. She beckoned me close. Her hair was braided tight, streaked with gray, her face cut sharp from grief. When she spoke, her voice cracked but didn't waver. "You know what he told me, don't you?" she said, eyes fixed on the photo. "I don't," I admitted. She drew a shaky breath. "He said my Jesus wants sweetness, the kind that hurts to take." The crowd murmured at that, some nodding like they'd heard pieces before, some making the sign of the cross. Her gaze turned on me, heavy and searching. "Deputy, you tell me what that means. You tell me why he said it like a promise." I had no words, only the sound of the jars rattling faintly, though no wind stirred. The prayers began, a circle around the tree, voices lifted low. That's when the candles froze. The flames didn't gutter out, they stopped, mid-flicker. The heat vanished, but the light stayed. Wax stiffened, then grew hard and translucent, reshaping into glass cylinders. I reached for one and it cut my fingertip like broken bottle glass. Shadows stretched then, longer than the bodies casting them. They spilled over the yard, climbing fence posts, slanting toward the pecan tree as if gravity bent toward its trunk. The hymn turned dissonant. Every note dragged half a beat behind, like the song itself didn't want to keep up. I felt my pulse hammer against the paper still stuck to my palm. The ink flared hot. Then the pecan tree groaned. From a branch overhead, bark split with a sound like rope tightening. A length of fiber pushed out, unwinding from the wood itself. In seconds, it braided into a coil. And by the time the last amen passed the circle, a perfect noose swung over the vigil, dripping sap like blood. Every second Saturday, Pine Hollow swells double its size. Folks drive in from 4 counties, spreading tarps and tables under the tin awnings of the fairground. They call it Trade Day. You can buy anything there: rusted lawnmowers, church dresses, jars of honey, pistols wrapped in rags. Cash only, no questions asked. Crowds make me itchy these days. Too many faces to track, too many echoes in the noise. But the sheriff wanted a presence, so I walked the aisles in plain clothes, badge on a chain around my neck. That's when I felt it, the hum. The entity loved a crowd. I noticed first with the booths. Same rows, same tarps, but they began to repeat. A table of belt buckles shaped like longhorns. A stall selling DVDs in cracked jewel cases. Another hawking jars of chow chow and boiled peanuts. Then again, same buckles, same DVDs, same chow chow. The people repeated too. A man in a camo jacket scratching his beard. A girl licking blue snow cone ice. When I doubled back, they were there again, frozen in the same gestures like bad copy paste. That's when the call came across the PA, a missing child. Boy 6 years old, blue shirt, buzz cut, name withheld. The crowd rippled like a field in wind, everyone craned, searching. I didn't have to, I saw him. 3 times. One aisle over, he tugged a woman's sleeve. 2 stalls down, he cried into a stranger's hip. Directly ahead, he stood barefoot on the asphalt, staring right at me. I went after the closest one. He bolted, weaving through tables, ducking under ropes. The other 2 moved in unison, breaking the crowd. All 3 funneled toward the shuttered livestock warehouse at the back of the grounds. I followed, boots slapping pavement. The air inside the warehouse was cooler, dimmer. My footsteps echoed in threes. The boy's voice came from everywhere, overlapping. Help me, help me, help me. Stacks of cages and folding chairs lined the walls. Each row doubled back on itself. No matter which aisle I took, I circled the same patch of floor. The 3 boys stood at the far end, shoulder to shoulder, faces blank. Only one had tears running. The overhead door groaned shut behind me, slamming like a cell block. The air tightened. My radio fizzed with Maya's voice, chopped and useless. I lunged forward, grabbing the crying one, lifting him under the arms. He felt solid, warm, real. The other 2 tilted their heads in unison and smiled. The boy in my arms went slack. His skin shivered, glassy for a moment, then rippled empty like a reflection breaking in water. I had chosen wrong, and the real child's scream echoed from behind the sealed door, cut off as the latch clanged shut. It was Red Holcomb again, the blind hangman out on his goat farm who told me the trick. You wanted to stop pushing. He rasped, one eye glazed, the other sharp as glass. Lay salt where the rain first hangs, not in the yards, not in the ditches, at the line, county line, that's where it comes through. I almost laughed, but nothing about Pine Hollow was funny anymore. That night I bought 50-pound sacks of rock salt from the co-op, loaded them into the cruiser, and started calling in favors. By dawn, half the county had turned out. Farmers with flatbeds, moms with station wagons, kids with buckets. Everyone tired of floods, tired of shadows, tired of Zeke's grinning ghost. We formed a convoy, a line of trucks strung out along the asphalt where Pine Hollow touched the neighboring county. Salt sacks split open, white grains spilling like sand. It felt almost holy. Each person pouring their strip along the tar, murmuring prayers under their breath. Maya kept a clipboard, ticking names like a roll call of the living. Some made jokes, some cried. One old woman sang a hymn so low it felt like the ground hummed with her. For the first time in months, I felt less alone. Then the sky went wrong. The storm that had been threatening all week stalled directly over the line. Rain didn't fall, it hung. Droplets suspended midair, trembling. The salt responded. Poured white grains lifted, rising in a shimmering curtain, a wall made of Earth's own bones. And through it I saw him, the bent man. His face pressed against the wall of salt like glass against aquarium glass. Angled jaw, bulging eyes lit purple, lips stretching in a grin that split too wide. The wall held. Every droplet of rain hissed when it touched, bursting like acid on metal. Behind me, people gasped, clutching children, gripping each other's hands. Then came the sound. A child sobbing, thin, desperate. Across the line, just beyond the wall of salt, stood a little boy. He couldn't have been more than 5. He wailed, arms outstretched toward his cousin on our side. The cousin, a teenager, shaking, tears already rolling, broke from the group. "No, wait," I shouted, but too late. She stepped across the salt to hug him, and the wall rippled, splitting wide where her foot had touched. The bent man's grin widened as the hiss of breaking salt filled the air. Deputy Earl Haskins had been on the force 20 years, a man who sharpened his own knives and rolled his own smokes. He'd buried a wife, raised 2 sons, and carried the kind of calm you only get from staring down both bar fights and brush fires. When I told him about the ledger, the rope, and the wall of salt, he didn't laugh. He just leaned back, rubbed the scar on his chin, and said, "Then we make a good gun." He showed me the round a week later. A hollow point stuffed with filings of wrought iron, ground deer bone, and blessed salt from a preacher who didn't want to know the recipe's purpose. "Old trick," Earl muttered. "Iron for the fey, bone for the dead, salt for the devil. If it don't work, at least it'll make one hell of a story." We drove out to the gravel pit, hung paper silhouettes against the berm. The air smelled of dust and motor oil. First shot, mine, kicked the Glock harder than normal. The round punched through the paper target, leaving a clean hole, but on the back side, no scorch, no tear. The slug clattered into the dirt and came out clean as a whistle, salt still glinting in the grooves. I fired 5 more. Each time the bullet passed through the target without powder burn, without lead smear, as if it had been washed. Earl squatted, picked one up, and spat. "Means it's waiting to bite something real. Ain't never gonna show its teeth on paper." That night I drove back to the clearing, the place of the bent oak stump where Zeke had tried to trade Alyssa's life. The sky was clear, but the air hung like rain about to start. The noose swayed from the sapling that had sprouted from the stump. Nobody had tied it. It had grown that way, fibers twisted into a loop heavy enough to snap necks. I raised the Glock. My breath fogged white, though the night was warm. The bent man lingered at the edge of vision, purple eyes catching faint starlight. Earl's words echoed, "Don't shoot him, aim at what he keeps," so I sighted the noose. My finger tightened. The iron bone salt round left the barrel with a crack that rolled through the trees. The noose jerked, fibers splitting where the round had struck, and then it screamed. Not rope snapping. A human scream layered with dozens of voices, high and low, men and women, all howling from the fraying hemp. The sound tore through the clearing, rattled my teeth, and made my blood run cold. The rope writhed like a living thing, strands smoking as they pulled apart. And somewhere in the dark, the bent man grinned wider. Like pain was exactly what he'd been waiting for. Miss Lillian Harp, the rootworker grandmother who'd shown me the bottle tree, told me one more thing before I left her porch that night. "It ain't the rope it loves, boy, it's the deal, the debt, the owing. That's its ink, its paper, but every devil's got a crack, you hear me? This one hates what it can't tally. You give without taking, it shrieks." I wrote that down in my notepad, underlined it twice. The thing despises free gifts. That's not just superstition, that's strategy. I started turning it over in my head. What could I give? Something pure, something that carried weight but no demand, no bargain. Then I remembered the cardboard box Alyssa had left behind when she moved back with her parents. Inside, a pair of baby shoes, too small now for her son, scuffed, soft-soled, blue trim faded. She told me once she couldn't bring herself to throw them out. I called her, asked permission. She hesitated, then said yes. voice breaking like glass over gravel. If this worked, it wouldn't save the county in one stroke, but it might cut the ledger's pen in half. I drove out past midnight to the clearing with the oak stump, the place where the noose grew and the bent man lurked just beyond flashlight beams. I carried the baby shoes in both hands. No gun, no salt, no bargain on my lips. The stump waited, roots clutching the earth like claws. The noose above swayed though the air was still. I knelt, placed the shoes carefully at the base of the stump, pressed my palms together, head bowed. No words of prayer, no deal, just the gift. The clearing answered. The air thickened. My ears popped like pressure dropping. The stars smeared across the sky like wet ink. And the bent man staggered from the tree line, convulsing. Time cracked. The cicadas cut out mid-cry. The air splintered like glass, fragments of the night sky hanging around me. My flashlight beam bent in angles I couldn't follow. The bent man clawed at his own chest, purple eyes rolling back. His mouth opened, and instead of words came a chorus, dozens of voices, hundreds maybe. The ode. Men, women, children, all screaming their names, their debts, their terror, all flooding the clearing like a wave of the unburied. And through them all, one phrase echoed louder, clearer than the rest. The ledger breaks when the gift is given. It hit just after sundown. The storm of the decade, the news called it, though the county scanner made it sound older than decades, like it had been waiting. Tornado sirens wailed across Pine Hollow, their long, mournful cries climbing over each other. Radios blew alive with chaos. Farmers calling from flooded pastures, deputies shouting for backup, mothers screaming names that weren't their children's. I stood in the doorway of the sheriff's office and watched Main Street vanish under a gray wall of rain. This wasn't weather. It was something turning itself inside out. Out on the blacktop, the asphalt buckled like ribs snapping. Semis sat crosswise, their trailers rising vertical, water sluicing upward instead of down. At the county line, rain stood in sheets, literal walls, vertical plains of water that shimmered like glass. People ran headlong into them and vanished, reappearing 3 blocks away, screaming words that weren't their own. On the radio, voices tangled. Deputy Haskins, house collapse on, sheriff, barn fire, West Ridge, child's voice, help me daddy, it hurts. And then a woman's laugh stretched thin, overlapping them all. I realized with a cold shiver people were speaking each other's lines. Whole conversations shuffled like a deck of cards. There was no staying in one place. My cruiser plowed through standing water, siren wailing, wipers useless. Calls bled into one another, locations folding. On one street, a mobile home floated sideways, family trapped on the roof. 2 blocks away, an old woman clung to a utility pole as sparks rained down. At the fairground, the warehouse doors banged open. Inside, 3 identical children still waited, crying. Every choice meant someone else went under. I stitched rescues together as best I could, hauling kids through chest-deep water, kicking doors off hinges, dragging a farmer from the cab of a drowning truck. Every face blurred, doubled, tripled. By the 3rd hour, I wasn't sure if I was saving the same people again and again, or if time had folded and I was chasing my own rescues in loops. The paper stuck to my palm burned like a brand, the words O's rope glowing whenever lightning cracked the sky. I staggered out near Pine Creek, water roaring on both sides, trees whipped in wind that seemed to come from every direction at once. That's when I heard her, not from the radio, from the tree line, Maya. Her voice rose clean over the storm, steady as always, but twisted, threaded with something darker. You promised me to. The shadows shifted. Between the trunks I swore I saw her silhouette, head set glinting, hands outstretched, and behind her taller, bent, purple-eyed. The storm cut out like a switch flipped. No thunder, no sirens, only silence heavy enough to hear my own pulse. Then the voice came, not from the trees or the radio, but from the air itself. 10 minutes, Noah Calder. Borrowed time, pay what you owe. The paper fused to my palm, seared white hot. I staggered, staring at the watch on my wrist. The second hand twitched and froze. 10 minutes, my last window. They brought me to the clearing, the same oak stump, same noose, same dirt that had drunk too many lives. And the county came too, not because they wanted to, but because something had gathered them. Every soul I'd pulled from the water, every child I'd carried, every farmer I'd dragged from a cab, they stood around the stump in a silent ring. Alyssa clutched her boy. Earl Haskins held his hat. Maya stood apart, headset still around her neck, eyes unreadable, all of them unwilling witnesses. The ledger demanded audience. The bent man stepped from the tree line, purple eyes burning like furnace glass. The rope swayed overhead, fibers groaning with anticipation. I dropped to my knees. For once, no weapon, no salt, no bargain. I lifted my face and offered the only thing I had left. Myself, clean, no trade, no ask. Take me and let them walk free. The air trembled, the rope lowered, coils unwrapping like a snake ready to cinch my throat. But then hands, one by one. Neighbors stepped forward, laying palms on my shoulders, back, arms. Alyssa, Earl, even Maya, none of them asked anything. None of them bargained, just gave, free gifts, love without ledger, the rule it hated. The bent man reeled, body convulsing, grin faltering. The noose spasmed in the air, strands unraveling. Rain fell again, real rain, not frozen midair, not sideways or in walls. Clean drops soaking us all. The rope ignited from within, fibers glowing ember red before collapsing into ash that drifted like gray snow. The bent man receded, form dissolving into the tree line, not destroyed, not banished. Just withdrawing, purple eyes fading last, burning hate into the dark. The ledger in my palm blackened, then flaked away. My skin left raw but free. Years passed. I left the badge, worked dispatch for a while, then retired. Folks still whispered about Pine Hollow storms, about a crooked shadow between trees. But life went on. On my last morning, 90 years old, lungs rattling like broken screens, I sat by the window of a hospice room. Rain tapped the glass, then froze mid-drop, each bead suspended. The familiar weight pressed the air. The voice I'd carried in nightmares leaned close, and I smiled first.